Hello, my name is Jordy Izzard, and I am Senior Associate Director of SAIS and HNC Alumni Relations. And I'm here today, October 20th, 2015, with Stephen Lesser, who went to SAIS, Washington, D.C. from 1961 to 62, and then went to the Bologna SAIS Europe campus in 1962 to 63, graduating with his MA from SAIS in 1963. And we're so happy to have you here today, and thanks so much for your time. And basically what we're just going to do is have a little bit of a conversation, and why don't we just start with what originally brought you to SAIS?
I came from Los Angeles, and I was an international relations major. When I came here, SAIS did not have a very large profile on the West Coast. There are only about 2 or 3 institutions who had graduate programs in international relations in the country. There was this in the Fletcher School, connected to Tufts University. And I wanted to be in Washington, and I didn't know SAIS. I had never visited before. I didn't know anybody who had gone here. It was a relatively new school, but I thought it would give me the largest, one of the biggest, the most extensive preparation and grounding for whatever I wanted to do in life, involving international relations with language and culture and history. In those days, it wasn't quite so, I think, programmatic in the way. It was more connected to history and language. Now you have to take courses in statistics and economics and econometrics, and it's a more, today, a more focused and difficult program, but then it seemed to be an extension from what I was doing. So I don't remember the other schools I applied to, but SAIS was my first choice, and I did well at UCLA, and I was very glad to be accepted. So I came here in the fall of 1961. I was just graduated from college. I was not yet, I was just 21.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
So I felt a little bit young when I came. So yeah, I didn't know anyone here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what your experiences were as a student.
Was all with one building. It wasn't like today we have 3 or 4 buildings on Massachusetts Avenue, huge institutions. This was a former home up Connecticut Avenue where Connecticut and Florida Avenue met. It was in a building, and we didn't have that many people as students. The faculty seemed a little bit old to me. I see what happens is when an administration changes, the higher officers in the Foreign Service and State Department, some of them come to SAIS, and they stay for a while. It's either Francis Wilcox was the dean, and he was an assistant secretary in the Eisenhower administration. And I was coming in the first days of the Kennedy administration. So we had a lot of Eisenhower administration people who were working at SAIS, which was fine, it was very interesting. I rented a room across the street from Florida Avenue. Really, I think it was, forget what, one of the number streets, but I just walked across the street. I didn't have far to go. I didn't have a car. I walked around everywhere, and I was just there all the time. People rented rooms up and down the street and close by, and I met quite a few people from my classes then. In fact, I really knew 8 or 9 people fairly well. Nobody came from the West Coast the way I did. I mean, I went to UCLA. Nobody from there. The only person from Los Angeles was Shayla Buckley, who went to Pomona, and she was a first-year student.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up working in the Defense Department. I found it a really interesting program, and I could do the work, and I'm not sure I could do the work today as today's students. I probably wouldn't be an appropriate student, but then it was perfectly fine. And I met really interesting people, and I enjoyed being in Washington, and it was one of the great experiences, I think. I liked my courses, and I studied German,
mm-hmm.
and I studied German in college. Now German is not studied so much in the United States anymore, but it was important then. It was the heritage of the war and everything else still we were dealing with, and building Europe, and West Germany was an important country. I knew some French and German. I was European studies at that time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I went to Bologna.
Mm-hmm. What were your experiences there?
Bologna was entirely different. We didn't live that near school on Belmaloro. We had an apartment building that many of the students stayed in. The school owned an apartment. I don't think they do that now. I think they make the students find their own. But that was good too. I had a roommate from Austria, who was my German teacher. We never became that close, really. We were kind of different types, and we had somebody from France. In the apartments, we had 4 of us in an apartment, 2 bedrooms, and sharing a common area and a kitchen. George was in Bologna. The other 2 friends I hear were not.
George Crumbar.
Yes, George Crumbar. Lots of George Grayson was another one, Carmen, lots of people. I'm still friends with people from Bologna. Not so many Europeans, more Americans. Many of the Europeans in our class went on back home to their foreign services and did very well in government and foreign affairs. The courses were different. They probably were not as hard. We had visiting professors, and each one had a different style. I was there in the waning days of Seagrove Haynes, who had started the center. He was not in the best of health and had a lot of personal issues he was dealing with. I liked the people very much, and it was. We went to study European integration then. I tease people now you go over there and study European disintegration. But there were 6 countries in the common market. We had this tour to Brussels and Paris, looked at NATO, and looked at the institutions of the community. And that was great, too. And I had courses. I took Italian, I took German, some French. And I traveled a lot. I had a car. I had a Cinquecento, which is a 500 Fiat. And I drove a lot. I mean, it was a very small car. I like small cars, actually. And I could put 4 people in them. Mm-hmm. And over Christmas vacation, I drove to Spain with some people. And during the spring break, a bunch of us drove to Greece. These were long trips. And it was a tremendously exciting experience, really, to do that. A young person, I was like 22 or 23 at that time.
That's great.
I was well prepared for that, though, because my parents are international, and my stepfather spoke some French. And when I came back, I was, I guess, 23. I was sort of sorry that the experience ended.
Yeah. Tell us when you graduated from SAIS.
Well, I was aimed towards the Foreign Service.
Yeah, tell us about your career.
My career. I mean, it was a short career in the Foreign Service, but I went to Stanford. I wasn't quite prepared. I was thinking of a PhD, but I didn't like the program that much, so I stopped after an MA at Stanford, and I went and taught for a year. While I was in Europe, I took the Foreign Service test. But
were you teaching in Europe?
No, I was a student there coming home from SAIS.
I see.
From Bologna Center.
Okay.
I never went back to teach, but coming back in Paris, at the embassy, I took the Foreign Service test.
Mm-hmm.
I took the written in Florence, I took the oral in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
But I was put on a register, you wait and wait and wait, and I never got an offered appointment for a while. So I went on with my life, and I spent a year at Stanford. That's the year that 1963 I started, and in November it was the year of the Kennedy assassination. Never forget that. And in '64, I decided that the MA was enough, and I didn't like the kind of program that they were offering in political science. So I taught for a year in Canada, in British Columbia, and I taught political science. They had a connection to Stanford, and I didn't have to apply to many jobs. I got that one. And while I was there, I was offered the Foreign Service appointment. So from that period to about '68, I was in the Foreign Service. I was in Washington again for training. I was sent to Japan. That was my first exposure to Asia, and I really liked it very much. Japan is the most interesting country at that point. Europe as a whole is probably more interesting, but Japan was just fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized I didn't really like working in a big bureaucratic institution, and the American Embassy had like 400 people in it.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the consulates better. I was a consular officer up north in Hokkaido,
mm-hmm.
and in the south in Kyushu and Fukuoka, and that was fine. But my next assignment would have been Vietnam, and I was really opposed to the war. I felt conflicted about it,
mm-hmm.
and I just decided to leave. I'm sorry in a way I did that. I just didn't think it. In retrospect, I probably should have stayed and had that experience. I'm still very much involved with Vietnam today. So I came back, and I went to UCLA, and then I got involved with refugee services. I've spent mainly, I retired fairly early because I didn't have to work too hard to support myself. And I've done philanthropic things and involved in community activities, mainly dealing with Asia in the past 20 years, 25 years. I sponsored a Vietnamese refugee family in 1975, and I got them on their feet. And when the Nanjing Center started, what do you call it? How do you refer to it? HNC? The Hopkins? Yeah, HNC. That's what it's referred to here all the time. I was very early as a volunteer in Los Angeles and did a lot to try to help in those days, in the 80s, the 90s, and I've been involved ever since. And I visited several times, and it's been my real connection to SAIS.
To be on the Hopkins Nanjing Council.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the last 20 years. It's one of the better things I think I've done in life. It's opened doors to me, to meet people, to learn things. I'm a learning animal. I like to pick up new ideas and meet new people and try new things and speak new languages. So this has been a great experience for me. I have an inclination for international relations, and this sort of plays into that desire of mine, into that, I think, strength that I have. So here I am in Washington for a council meeting. I'm finding out how things are going.
And we're so happy to have you here.
Well, yeah. Maybe so. I mean, I see that the issues a lot of burden has been placed on them, staff and fundraising people here to do a lot of work, which I think the University of Hopkins itself should help support more. But I'm sure they're excellent people, and it's going to work. The students are fabulous. It's an outstanding institution. It's the finest, best American-Chinese joint program in China. There's nothing to compete with it. And I want Hopkins to keep that reputation, keep that position. More people should know about it.
And we are working on that right now.
I know, you are.
So, given, kind of looking back at your career and in your involvement with the Hopkins Nanjing Center and what you're doing currently, what advice might you have for a current SAIS or HNC student today?
I think they're following what I would say. I mean, they seem to get international experience fairly early. Some of the students come older and have been abroad. You get a range of students here. I think they know what they're doing. I think they're smarter than we were. It's a more difficult world. You know, when I came here, it was American primacy. I mean, America was America, God's country, and we sort of controlled, we had the world in many ways, in Asia, and in Europe and Latin America. It was America, America. And it's not true that way anymore. I mean, America's still #1 country, but not in the same way with the rise of China and Russia and different issues. So they have to be a little sensitive to the way the world really is, but I think they are. I think many of them have that experience. And you've internationalized the school so much. We didn't have that many foreign students at SAIS when I was there. All Americans. And now you have so many students coming for the MA program here from abroad. I just noticed yesterday when I went to the lecture by the head of Sony Entertainment at the auditorium, the questions go, well, I'm a graduate I'm a first-year student from Columbia. I'm from so-and-so. I'm from so-and-so. So you've internationalized the whole program, so students have the opportunity to connect right there. I mean, we didn't have that here in Washington. I had to go to Europe for that. I guess I think that they're doing what I would say that they should do, is get international experience and learn language and learn culture. It's not all technology, and it's not all IT. It's what people think inside in their hearts and their heads and how they are. And not everyone wants to be an American. And be sensitive and aware of the way the world really exists and the way the world is. I mean, when I went to Japan, I worked in the visa section. You see, and the Japanese needed visas to come here then, and they line up in front of the visa section hours before it opened, and all day long they'd come in, and we would examine them to see that they come back. I mean, we were worried about visitors' visas, giving them, and then that they would stay here. That was an issue then. Now it's not quite that. Now that you don't need a visa, and they can just come and they can get it at the airport. It's different, and it's not the You know,
Mhm.
Ronald Reagan talked about America, the shining country in the hill.
Mhm.
And it was, and everyone wanted that to come all over the world. And
Good.
I think
Well,
that's it.
yeah, no, that kind of summarizes everything. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for spending time on the interview today, and
Okay,
for all you do to help SAIS HNC in the
thank you.
world.
So I guess you've no more questions or anything?
No,
Okay.
yeah, we're good.
Was that all right?